So I can play all my old Xbox games, right? All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Unbox those old Xbox. Old Xbox games are officially coming to Windows 11.
Meet the BIT79 home computer system.
Dial 1-800-STRIPPERS. We discuss paid DLC before paid DLC was DLC.
And parliamentary politics along with the Asteroids film you've been waiting for coming up on this week's show for the week of the 1st of August, 2026.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
If I may open this week's show, I'm Jason, Dave's back, Chris is still here. If I may open this week's show by asking the three of us here and everybody listening at home, if I talked about how I haven't really figured out how to use VR headsets. I'm not into it. But I've been listening to a lot of interviews with, popular computer figures who are now from the 70s and 80s, who are now in their 70s and 80s. And a frustrating number of them have clearly not figured out anything more elaborate than their cordless phone. And it makes for not good experiences listening back. So I'd like all of us here to take the pledge. We will do our best. We will learn how to use communication technology 20, 30 years from now so that we can share our memories in a format that will make sense and be intelligible and not garbled and keep having packet drops so that our memories will be remembered into the 50, 60 plus year time frame. So if it's VR or whatever, I will figure it out so that I can be I can contribute to that discourse. Let's not be two crazy old men.
I'm not sure I understand the pledge here, but sure.
I'm Dave, and I pledge that should there be any interest in me, which there won't be, I will endeavour to make sure I've got a decent way of relaying my thoughts to the world.
That's all I ask.
What he's talking about, Chris, is when you listen to these wonderful old stories from the pioneers in the 70s and 80s, they're using the world's worst technology to get it across, and it sounds like you're speaking to them in a tin bath.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And there's packets dropping all over the place. So it's like, wait, did he say not? Did he say we did not call Apple about that? Like what? Oh no,
Yeah, true.
We have a packed show this week. Chris.
What?
Normally you talk about your high score challenges, and you made a special achievement. I genuinely was proud of you for doing this. You tried, and you did it. What did you do?
I finished Outrun, and now I actually I'm up to about 15 million now as of this afternoon. I've beaten the Stig score, so I think. But the actual league that I'm in is messed up because suddenly all these weirdly every Outrun world record holder has come out of the woodwork, or unofficial world record holder has come out of the woodwork and joined this league. So they've just messed up the league scores, and then they'll all run away when it's no longer Outrun. But I've beaten it, so that's great. And now I just want to beat it on a real cab. That's all I care about.
That's beating these old games is such a sense of closure. I've got RPG games I want to beat in a certain way, even though it takes hundreds of hours. I'm so desperate to do it, so I'm so proud of you for doing it. Well done.
Thank you.
I've never owned an Xbox, but I don't think you need to own one to see what's going on with them over the years. And I really was quite interested from the start of the Xbox in what they did with them. Microsoft engineers took Dell laptops, broke them down, and tried to design a PC in a box using existing parts. And importantly, they followed in the footsteps of what PCs had been doing for the 10 years preceding Microsoft's Xbox, which was they went for the absolute best bang for buck they could find that would do the job. And that's what the beauty of PCs were. That's why PCs started out being eye-wateringly expensive when IBM made them, to the point of the millennium where you could go and you could get one for free in America, subsidized by the cost of the internet subscription you got with it. So they ended up with a Celeron because that was the best bang for buck. And it was actually a mobile one, and an NVIDIA GPU that was pretty close to the GeForce 4 series, and that was a fairly high-end one, a standard 8GB hard disk, an IDE CD-ROM, paired it with 100 megabit Ethernet, and a stripped-down version of Windows 2000 with DirectX, 8.1, and that was what they called an Xbox. And they sold it for far less than what you'd be able to pick up the parts for as a consumer. $300. And they did that because they learned from the failures of Commodore, Atari, 3DO, and all the rest. They knew that you had to go to market and you had to suffer. You had to give it away. You had to almost pay people to play your games. And you had to keep doing that from the start until it stuck. And for years, they were ridiculed. People kept saying it was just the whole group think out there was that this is idiocy. They're throwing money away. Eventually, they'll just have to say, okay, we failed, and shut the project down. And they're still going. They didn't fail. It was worth it in the long run for them. So much so, in fact, that they're looking to properly bring back some original Xbox classics to Windows. So thank you to OKYam894 for submitting this to the subreddit. They've linked a story from Windows Central on it. And I thought I'd go a bit deeper because I had my own questions to answer. And I thought our viewers and listeners would want to cut through the rubbish to the actual facts because there's been an awful lot said on the internet about this so far. And it's been a bit more heat than light. So this is for Windows 11 only. It works through the Microsoft Xbox app only. It's for specific games only, and it's launched as what they're calling a preview with Blinks, Conquer, Crimson Skies, and Fusion Frenzy only. So only those 4 games. You either have to have a Game Pass to play these 4 games, or you can buy an individual digital license to play the games. And this is the next bit is where the internet has gone a bit mad with it all. If you already own these games, then cross-compatibility is included. However, only if you have a digital license for them. If you have the physical disc copy, you're out of luck. You can't play it on Windows. So if you've been snapping up bargain used Xbox games, nothing wrong with that, then sadly no, you'll have to pay again to get the digital license or use an actual Xbox to play them. The games, though, are enhanced up to 4 times the resolution through upscaling, VSync support, anisotropic filtering, I won't say that again, I'll get it wrong again, and anti-aliasing. So those jaggy edges will be reduced and the games should look better than they ever did, but still be the same games. Presumably things like slowdown will not happen in the same way they did on the original Xbox, for better or for worse. Usually for better, sometimes for worse, because it can mean that in a boss fight it gets a wee bit easier with slowdown. And you can play windowed or full screen. Achievements are not yet there, but they will be patched in by year-end 26, Microsoft say. The system requirements are very modest, a 4-core CPU and a GTX 950, an RX 550 or ARC 310, so a quite old graphics card. Probably you get away with a modern onboard graphics in a CPU, I'm not sure. And 8 gigabytes of RAM, which I think is welcome in the current climate. Microsoft say it's part of a broader effort to preserve Xbox games from the past and bring them to PC over time, but have not yet announced what other games will come across. Presumably, it can't be everything because there'll be licensing problems with music and all the rest of it, as we've seen. But we'll see what happens. So let's talk about what's not been announced. Any multiplayer support or revival of servers. Extra remastering features. There's no list of games that will be done, and there's no list of games that can't be done. And the important thing, I'll reiterate, no ability to use a PC optical disc to play games without a digital license. And I think I should probably spend a little bit of time on that when explaining why it won't happen. First of all, the discs are not standard Blu-ray and they need specific firmware to be properly read. However, you could still verify that you have the disc and allow access without doing the proper DRM and all the rest of it. Not DRM. It's digital. It's not digital. It's physical copy protection without doing the physical copy protection. But I don't think that'll happen. There's no incentive for them to do it. Part of this drive is because there's been a success in Windows-based handhelds like the ROG Ally. So they're trying to go for that. And if they were going to allow a disc play, then it'd be some kind of surrender your disc in a shop in exchange for a digital license type deal. And if they did allow it, then it would be trivial to spoof the system with an ISO image or burn a DVD-R to circumvent it. But it is nice to hear that games are going to be lasting longer. But it does raise an interesting question for me. Traditionally, emulation and retro has been done through emulators and through the abandonware, or to put it a different way, piracy of these old games, depending on which side of the fence you're sitting. With the booming opening up previously thought to be commercially dead back catalogues, be it through Steam, through GOG, through modern Xbox backwards compatibility, through Nintendo Switch Online, or through PlayStation Plus, or through remasters like Night Dive Studios, etc., there are now masses of ways to access the old stuff in a bit more of a curated way. It's not too expensive, it's easy, and it works well. Does that mean that it makes it more attractive to do it legitimately, to ignore the whole emulation thing, and just to say, look, I'll just do it the modern way, and I'll pay Microsoft a couple of quid to get this, or Nintendo a couple of quid to get this? Or do you still going to stay with the old methods? Chris, what do you think?
This is interesting. First of all, I don't think you meant Blu-ray, because the original Xbox was way before the Bluray era, so it would have been.
I meant DVD.
Yeah,
if I said
DVD.
Blu-ray, idiot.
Yeah,
Idiot.
no, it's all good.
You said CD-ROM. I'm sorry. Well,
No, he said, yeah. Anyway, yeah, he said Blu-ray.
Well, if I said CD-ROM, I meant DVD. If I said Blu-ray, I meant DVD. If I said DVD, I got really lucky and got it right by accident. Sorry, folks. Feel free to call me an idiot in the comments.
But I think the justification for abandonware, which is often used, I think when someone like Microsoft comes out with something like this, I think it's a good thing, because a lot of the time, the whole justification for calling things abandonware so that we can pirate them is the fact that, well, if only they'd let us buy the games legit, then we would. So that gets rid of that whole argument. I don't think the people that make that argument will go and do it through the legit means. They just want to have a moral justification for what they're going to do anyway. So I like when houses actually make it possible for us to buy and play old media. I would never have expected this to play original discs. I would have always assumed that this would be something that would, or systems like this would be just another way to buy the games that we want to play from back in the day, much like Nintendo have been doing with their IP, and so I applaud it from that standpoint. Crimson Skies is an awesome game, so that's a great one to start off with. And of course, now PCs are easily powerful enough for this sort of thing. But this does kind of remind me of when they first ported the original Halo to PC back in 2003. And it ran terribly. So hopefully that won't be the case with these Xbox games, because, of course, the PC hardware has moved on since then. I do want to know, though, I mean, if I do end up playing with this, although is this just Microsoft trying to force me to upgrade to Windows 11? But I would want to know if there's a USB, and somebody can let us know in the Reddit or the comments, is there a USB adapter for the OG Duke controller? Because oddly, that's what actually attracted me to the Xbox in the first place, especially for racing games, because it's a bigger controller, there is so much travel in those triggers. When you're playing a racing game, it almost feels like a Scalextric or a slot car controller, and you've got that sort of real analog control on both the accelerator and the brakes. It's not as good as, obviously, a steering wheel and pedal set, but it's not bad at all. It gives you really good control. So I'd be interested if that's possible, and there's some racing games on this. Maybe I'll be tempted to upgrade to Windows 11, Microsoft. Who knows?
Do I ruin your bit if I just have an answer for you now?
No, not at all. Let me know if that's possible.
So yeah, original Xbox controllers, they're electrically USB. They just need adapting. You do need a custom driver as well. And in my quick search, I am not clear if there's a working version that people trust for Windows 11. So there may still be a little bit of play there, a little bit of research. But yeah, big picture, yes, it's possible. Specific case for Windows 11, maybe TBD. Boy, is there a big gulf between expectations and reality on this one. Yeah. I mean, and it was inevitable, because it's the classic hype cycle. Oh, it's really happening. It's really happening. We're going to end, oh, okay. So yes, I'm very happy for the fans of Blinks, Conquer, Crimson Skies, and Fusion Frenzy. And if these games had mothers and their mothers are still alive, I'm happy for their mothers as well. But this is not the news that you'd hope to hear about the ability to run games published in 2002 on your 2026 computer. We have corrected things for our noble lord, the secretary for Ultima, that this was a DVD-ROM. It wasn't like the PS2, which has DVD playback strictly out of the box. You did have to buy the DVD remote as a sort of dongle to unlock that feature, which is a flash forward to Chris's story, but it did work as one. Yes, my noble lord, the secretary for Ultima.
You need to remember to listen to what I'm thinking, not what I'm saying. Problem solved.
That works well. And clearly somebody, or more likely several somebodies, junior programmers, as well as some people who have been hanging on since the old days at Microsoft, are shouting, "Not it, it's not me, it's not me," at the inevitable prospect of having to spin up a replacement for classic Xbox Live. All those well, achievements are coming. We don't have network play yet. You know there's a project manager sitting there going well, we're obviously going to have to do this. And all of the people that project manager knows are like, do not call me. I am not here. Burn my number. But I think it's going to happen. And we'll hear the screaming.
You've educated me, Jason, on the DVD remote. Sorry, I was sort of ticking that over after you said it, because the pack I bought came with the remote and it had the little infrared receiver. I never realized that you can't play DVDs without that. That's really interesting. Wow.
And that was one of the draws to do the Xbox modding and install the alternate dashboard, is that the alternate dashboard would just play DVDs even with the wired controller. But yeah, it would not act as a DVD player under the official firmware if you didn't have the remote thing plugged in.
Do you get the appeal, though, in having someone curating this for you and not having to mess about with emulators and all the rest of it? Does that seem smoother, or do you think it's a trap?
to keep hammering the Star Wars imagery. No, I mean, yes, clearly the way to make this a product is as a curated collection. And with all respect to Chris's highlighting of Crimson Skies, which I know has a very good reputation. I know some people are into Conquer as well, but it's such a overall bleh list of titles to lead with that it's just, again, that gulf between now I can finally and all right. So yeah, if it continues as this curated experience, which again is the only thing that makes sense as a product for Microsoft to create and support, then great. It's just, obviously they're hedging their bets pretty heavily.
See, I see the appeal. Sorry, Chris, I spoke.
Yeah, no, I see the appeal, especially for people. Let's remember, it's not just about us nerds who tinker with emulators, but those that don't do that, but would see this and go, oh, heck yeah, I want to play that on my PC, and here's an easy way to do it. But Jason's got a good point on the list of games. If they launch this with Halo, right, the original Halo, as a launch title, the reason why they're not doing that, of course, is because they're still reselling us Halo over and over again, now being ported to PS5, right? So that's a big thing, because that's jumping to Sony's platform. But why would they give that away for free? But that's what they should have done.
Well, they're not really giving this away for free. This is to sell the Game Pass and also to sell the digital licenses. But yeah, I don't think there'll be that many people with a digital license to play these. But it does appeal to me. I asked you the question before I answered it myself. I've got a Kobo reader. It's my ebook reader, and I really prefer having bought the items on the Kobo shop, because I can do that on my computer, on my mobile phone, on the device itself, and they're kept in this central cloud library for me. And I can download them and strip the DRM and keep a permanent copy myself, but it's so much more convenient. And I'm finding these things that they're doing here with these libraries of games, rather than emulators and all the rest of it, very tempting, very convenient. So I like the idea here. I'm pretty sure Microsoft will get a fairly full library of these Xbox games out eventually. This is supposed to be kind of a soft launch. This is kind of a let's let people dip their toes in but not get overwhelmed with demand. So we'll see where it goes. But I think if we look back at this in 260 weeks ago in retro, in 5 years' time, if we do one of those on this, I think we'll probably find that there are huge gaps in the library of games that you would want to be there that aren't. But we'll see what happens. We are sponsored this week, thank you very much, by PCBWay.com. PCBWay are a PCB manufacturer that do much more than this. They can make your PCBs for you. They can also pick and place things on them. But they can also do things like 3D printing, and not just in the normal 3D print stuff. They can use all sorts of materials to 3D print. I got my things printed in resin for the fan shrouds for my NAS, and I was really impressed with them. But the thing that we like most about PCBWay is their shared project library, where you can submit projects that you've developed, which will allow other people to do simple or, in fact, complicated things to solve problems that we have that you can't just go to Amazon and buy the solution for. So, Jason, you've had a look, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. I have. One of the shared projects this week, and those are things that basically are submitted by the community. People, it's much like our subreddit, actually. People can upvote, downvote, comment, ask questions. So one of those leading projects of the week is the Arduino 2040. That is essentially for people who have outgrown the constraints of the Arduino Uno board. It's got 2 microcontrollers, one of which is an RP2040. It's got a 5x5 grid of pixels to give you some feedback in the project you're working on. It's got a matte black finish, a beautiful white silk screening, more professional and luxurious than you can imagine. So if you are a serious robotics enthusiast and you need the control power of an RP2040 and an ESP32 MCU, may want to give this Arduino 2040 a look. Also, the Open Modbus OM64DO. It's a 64-channel low-side output expansion module intended for industrial automation, machine control, and distributed I/O networks using the Modbus RTU over RS485. I mention all this because those are very important things to people in industrial control settings, and the fact that you can globally outsource your solutions to these problems rather than having, just that one guy who charges you 70 miles to drive in and fix your problems in your factory is pretty astounding, the world we live in. So that's got support for between 5 to 48 VDC, wide supply input as well. Quite a bit of interesting industrial automation, which isn't the sexiest part of tech, but it is very, very important to keep the world running. I'm thinking
pinball, Jason.
Potentially, yeah. All your toys and gimmicks on your pinball table. And finally, yes, I did click on this one because it had the word laser. It's the ILDAWAVE X16 V2. It's an open source high resolution laser DAC for laser enthusiasts. It is built around the dual processor ESP32S3 and an RP2354. A lot of projects combining those Raspberry Pi system on chips and ESP32s this week, it looks like. As all-in-one flexible and hackable laser control board. Open, modifiable, easy to build on without locking users into proprietary protocols, closed tools, or fixed workflows. So if you are a laser show designer or have other laser entertainment needs, this ILDAWAVE X16 V2 is up there on PCBWay, along with so many more projects for you to, again, explore. Just click to order. You can submit your own revisions and modifications or discussions there. Quite a bit of social media opportunity to grow and learn on PCBWay.
Thank you for sponsoring us. If you'd like to sponsor an upcoming episode of This Week in Retro, then write to us at TWIR, TWIR, at thisweekinretro.com for details.
The emulation scene that's been growing and expanding for over 30 years now has been a wonderful way to learn about computers that were popular in faraway lands, far away from you, from the comfort of your own home. It's where I first really learned about and got any time with things like the Amstrad CPC, the Auric, the MSX, all of which are machines that either really didn't exist in North America, were hideously inconvenient to import and use, or, were here and gone in an instant, like the Timex Sinclair line. Now, these days, in addition to a range of, ever easier to access emulators, we were just talking last week about in-browser emulation, you can also learn about computers in faraway lands from slick YouTube documentaries like this one, submitted by Pajako6502, his streak is back, about a computer that I definitely have not stumbled into by any way in the emulation scene, the Bit79 from Taiwan's Bit Corporation. The video that's on the channel Inkbox it's really more the story of that company, which is a startup from 1980, which played both the software and the hardware market games, making software for popular consoles of the day, and also creating clones of that hardware for their local markets, where, let's say, the original manufacturers had less legal reach to stop them. Clever. It is an enhanced, unlicensed clone of Nintendo's original family computer, or Famicom, from 1983. It does take Famicom cartridges directly. The Nintendo Entertainment System carts are the same except for electrical mapping, which is a significant difference. There is more onboard memory than in the standard Famicom. There's a totally different basic language, more on that in a minute. And it actually is credited as being the jumping off point to a whole line of computers that I had no idea existed until watching the video. And all of this is possible because cloning of the NES/Famicom CPU and what they call the Picture Processing Unit, or PPU, that got rolling in 1987, which honestly is earlier than I realized. And so when United Microelectronics Corporation, or UMC, got into the game with their variants of unlicensed Nintendo hardware, Bit Corporation embraced the UMC solution to create the Bit-79 home computer. So to be clear, this is definitely not the first NES or Famicom clone, and it's not even Bit Corporation's first Famicom/NES derived design. But if I follow this correctly, what it is that it's the first one in the Famicom, family, authorized and definitely otherwise, that shipped as a full-fledged all-in-one computer. Because the real Famicom, as well as many of the clones that sold before, either sold the keyboard separately. That was the case in the Famicom. You got it with the basic cartridge, or they treated it as some sort of separate accessory. The Bit-79 stands out for being presented, fully formed out of the box as a low-cost desktop computer. Now, the host praises the use of the keyboard itself. We will take his word for it. Overall, it does look like it may have been maybe adapted from a cheap PC clone, maybe an electronic typewriter of the era. Was it got on board? Well, it's got a combination of ROMs that add up to 20K of total space, video plus general purpose RAM adding up to 10K with ability to expand to the full 64K addressable space that the 6502 CPU, it's kind of adjacent to that, but that's what it can address. There is a classic 25-pin parallel port on board as well. 10K of RAM may not sound like a ton, but keeping in mind that the original NES had just 4, and really, you can get a lot done in that relatively small amount of memory if you're putting your payload, the actual program, on a cartridge, on ROM. But the Bit-79 goes beyond that. It's got tape input and output, it's got that parallel port, and it has BASIC on board. Now, curiously, despite their commitment to the bit of pirating the Famicom, the BASIC does not appear to be pirated from Nintendo's original Family BASIC cartridge for whatever reason. The video host goes through, does some archaeology, and reveals that it is apparently cloned from AppleSoft BASIC, even leaving in some of the Apple-specific calls that don't have any purpose in the Famicom hardware. So the video's host has posted an archive on archive.org, including a scan of the user manual, which oh man, of course it's in Chinese. I got all excited there for a second. But there are some sections, like the memory map and a block diagram of operation, which are entirely in English. The electrical specifications are as well in more or less English, which surprised me. It does reveal that it has an oddball text screen resolution of 24 rows and just 30 columns. So that's better than the likes of a Commodore VIC-20, but is still pretty limited for 1989, which is when this computer is coming out. But still, you think about it, this is clearly intended for low-income buyers. It's clearly going to be hooked up directly to a TV, so that may have steered the decision on how to do that. The Inkbox archive also includes an emulator, which does appear to be basically an NES emulator that's just being fed the custom Bit-79 ROM, but sure, that tracks. You can see that it was available in both NTSC and PAL variants. If we've got those specifications on the screen for you, we'll link to the manual as well. And it turns out, watching this nice tidy 23-minute video, this was a pretty capable machine. The NES had some real hardware advantages that are not especially well documented or made convenient to access it from the BASIC that's on board, but it's possible. The video does show off some sample software that's capable of coming up with some pretty engaging gaming in that Bit-79 AppleSoft hybrid Hydra BASIC. As intriguing as all of this is, the Bit-79 fades into obscurity even as the company is selling more and more Famiclones in more markets, and it even tries its hand at a Game Boy clone. This is not enough in what's becoming, in the late 80s, early 90s, a very competitive and increasingly litigious electronics market, and they are defunct by 1992. But the story of the rise and fall of the Bit-79 hands off to the bigger NES on a chip, or NOAC, phenomenon. And that springs up in 1993 to create what the video explains is the education machine market, which essentially is selling the promise of Nintendo's family computer from 1983, but is selling it to a Chinese-speaking audience, and it's doing so, a decade later. The story goes that just 4 short years after the Bit-79 comes out, the various Taiwanese chip plants who are in the business of making and iterating on knockoff NES chips, well, they're getting better and better at cost reduction, and they figured out how to put everything, all the Nintendo hardware, on a single chip. And that substantially decreases the cost to build one of these things. So in 1983, UMC develops a true NOAC, the UM6561, and that unlocks a whole new wave of cloning. And the apologies to our handful of Chinese-speaking listeners out there, the Xiaobaoang 218, which sells millions of units in mainland China. And there's a whole slew of imitators to that as well. I mean, I was not only ignorant of the Bit-79, but also this entire Chinese educational computer trend, which ran on NOAC. I'm hopeful that we'll have some video clips in here for those on audio. These are, sometimes they literally are just like external PC keyboards that have had a cartridge slot, for the Famicom cart hacked into them, and they've got a few, out leads and 7-pin connectors for NES hardware. But this was big from in the 1990s in China. And frankly, I'm not very informed on what that 8-bit market looked like in China. From my perspective, these Nintendo on the chips, they just existed to be at the heart of, those sketchy all-in-one Nintendo clones that you would, first find at your seedier shops and now, frankly, can get in much more reputable places. Did you guys know anything about these Nintendo-ish computers of that era?
No, not until recently. I knew there was a vibrant market in NES clones in China. I knew that China didn't have the same enforcement of copyright the rest of the world did, that if you made something in China, then you made money if you were able to make it cheaper than someone else could copy your designs by. And it's one of those things that comes up like, did you know Sega is big in Brazil? Seems to be the equivalent of, did you know the NES was widely cloned in China? But I think it's neat that you take the Famicom or the NES, whatever you want to call it, and you say, okay, what if we built something that could run all these games fine, but was also a full-on microcomputer? And this is a vital part. We mass-produced it so that it's affordable, so that people would buy it rather than have it as a premium add-on. Because if we look at the times it was done as a premium add-on, it failed. The Coleco Adam, the Intellivision, the SK1100, the Spectra Video for the 2600, and even Nintendo's own Family Basic, that wasn't a failure, but it wasn't a big success. These were all kind of premium add-ons. This is someone saying, hang on, shouldn't cost that much. And they do it that way. And that's why this was the success that it was. And it makes me wonder how things could have been different if they had taken that idea to saying, let's make the add-on part of the original package. It's only going to cost an extra 20 quid or whatever.
I had no clue about this at all. And I find it really interesting. It's crazy what other countries had. It kind of reminds me of, from the UK, we know about the Spectrum clones from the Eastern Bloc and how big that kind of stuff was over there. And also it reminds me of the crazy amount of peripherals that they got in Japan for what we would get as just a pure console that, like you say, Dave, would literally expand it out into a usable computer. I think Sega had something similar as well. So, I think it's really, really interesting. And I don't know why, but we hardly ever got those extras in the West, if at all.
If I may ask the noble lord, the secretary for Ultima, to explain what he meant by the Coleco Adam, or clarify if he may have meant something else, because the Adam was an all-in-one computer system. It was just terrible.
I meant the add-on for it. The add-on to, what did I mean? The console that came out had a keyboard add-on. Yes, sorry. ColecoVision, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting confused again. The DVD add-on for that turned it into a Blu-ray player.
The Coleco Blu-ray,
came in a CD-ROM. GD-ROM.
I knew the vibe you were on, but the Adam, notoriously, yes, you had all the things, but the power supply is in the printer, and it all works terribly, and it erases your tapes, and so you got everything. It was just bad, as opposed to some of those like the Intellivision add-on and the Atari keyboard module and all that stuff. Yes. We do not get a lot of correspondence from Chinese markets, but if you are out there and you have any sort of connection or hands-on experience with the likes of the Bit 79 or this wave of 1990s Chinese educational computers which followed, please send us more stories like this. Because, yeah, to the point of this discussion, like, here was Bit Corporation saying, well, rather than just, parcel this out in bits and bobs, let's take this design, take Nintendo's design, and just present it like we think they should have in the first place, as a fully functional home computer. It is extremely cool to know that even in 2026, it's possible to learn about legit full-formed computer platforms you'd never heard of before. So thank you very much for submitting this one, Pajaka.
On to housekeeping now, which will probably be longer next week once all the corrections we don't know about for the nonsense I've come out with this week come back in. G'day, Bruce, who has upgraded from monthly to annual. So if you want to save a little bit, you can upgrade to the annual membership. But we do welcome all patrons. And if you want to help support us, if you want to become an official twirler, where would you go to, Chris?
You go to patreon.com/thisweekinretro.
Thank you.
Well, if I'd known you were interested in a long housekeeping segment, we could have shared all of the correspondence we got from last week's episode from things like the International Rounders League, the Global Monopoly Foundation, the Apple Pie Association of Greater Europe. But we'll skip all of that and instead just tell you that we got word over the weekend from Cinemax, who created the Sinistar arcade documentary that we covered way back in episode 219. Remember when we were young and innocent? Three of us were just starting out together, episode 219. Now,
full heads of hair.
He has another video coming up in just a few short weeks. It's going to be focusing in on Robotron and Blaster. Now, Cinemax also has a Kickstarter coming up he would like us to let people know about. It's called Nested Dreams. It is a surreal cartoon top-down adventure game about a cartoon duck in 1999 who's coming to terms with her crazy yet relatable punk past from 1993. That's going to be wrapping up not too long after this episode publishes. So if you'd like to hear more about that, check out Nested Dreams. And thanks very much for getting in touch, Cinemax, and we will watch for more on that teaser. You may be seeing some video behind it, of me behind it now if you're on YouTube.
I quite enjoyed being a viewer last week, but I did find the talk about how important the NES was in the UK very interesting. Because of all the revisionism that happens and we end up building on top of the truth and getting quite distant from it. So it just so happened that not long after I watched This Week in Retro from last week, I watched a video from Yesterzine where Dudley looks into a magazine called CPC Attack, a rather ropey 1992 Amstrad CPC magazine, born from the bones of Amstrad Computer User, the original one. The relevance here that he looks at software sales for the UK market and has actual percentages, which tell some really interesting stories, like how dominant the Amiga was at that particular time in the middle of the boom for it, as well as how irrelevant some other ones were, how small they were. Malcolm851 submitted it to the subreddit, and I recommend it as a fascinating video because, as always, Dudley uses magazines from the day as his primary source of information rather than the groupthink that now exists 30 years later, which has gone in one direction or the other away from the truth. Fascinating video. On now to news in brief, and Count Binface, a UK politician, it's a long story, I don't think we've got time for it, currently in an election campaign, has demanded that Sega bring back Sega World in London's Trocadero and make Shenmue 4. There's quite a reasonable chance that Count Binface is a listener, so since he's a big retro fan, good luck, and thanks to Hubris I for submitting that Metro article.
The Trocadero was the best. Sorry, carry on.
And John C. Dvorak, prolific tech columnist and commentator, has died at the age of 80. The fact that his chaos-infused and long-running podcast No Agenda opened up his obituary by disclaiming that he loved to stir up controversy generally and had been lying about his age for decades specifically might be the best way to sum him up if you are unfamiliar with his work. Across publications like PC Magazine and InfoWorld, he sounded off on all sorts of tech topics, usually critically. and he took his act into the worlds of television and podcasting as the age of the big money magazine began to dwindle. He bridged the world of the kind of typical irascible American big city newspaper columnist and the tech media, bringing an acidic tone to areas where people might otherwise get too optimistic and caught up in the prospect of things which might work well and create a better future.
Dune 2, often called the start of the real-time strategy genre, has received a demake to the C64. The Artworx edition is playable now, and it's full-on proper implementation of the game. It looks and feels like a proper C64 game, and if this had come out in 1986 instead of 1992, we might have seen the genre start years earlier. Thanks to Good Punk 2 for the link to the YouTube video, and the link to the game is in there as well.
We covered Randy Linden's new Super FX3 chipset some time ago, which is an upgrade to the SNES's original Super FX, which was an upgrade to the SNES that was present in some cartridges. So you put the cartridge in and it had a graphics coprocessor in it. And it came out in the first game like Starwing, which you might know as Star Fox. Well, the good news is we hoped it would be, and Randy developed it for the port of Doom, which is why we covered it. The good news is that as we hoped, some games are starting to be adjusted to take advantage of this new Super FX3. And the first one is Starwing, or Star Fox, and it's had the treatment, and the game is the same except with much smoother FPS. Much more often hitting the 20 FPS maximum. Yes, 20 FPS was a maximum back then. And these are the kind of upgrades that I'm really behind. The same game, but with the rough edges taken off, just like Microsoft are doing with the Xbox thing. They're taking the same game and you're playing on a modern PC at higher resolution with the filtering, that I'm not going to say the word again badly, and DVDs, CDs, and Blu-rays. So thank you to OKYam894 for submitting this time extension article on it.
I don't know. For all of us who played Elite on any 8-bit system you care to name, 20 frames per second sounds fantastic. So yeah, I'll take that any day. Soggy Fennel 448 shared a piece from the entertainment site Deadline.com about a deal by Universal Pictures to make movies based on up to 10 different classic Atari properties. They've got access to everything: the deadly duck dragons of adventure, the gem-collecting super jumping bears and crystal castles, hyper-evolved houseflies and Yar's Revenge. I do think they overpaid in asking for both centipede and millipede rights. A lot of overlap there. More seriously, this truly is a retro concept. Keep in mind, Atari was owned for years by Warner Communications, so it was a corporate sibling of then the Warner Brothers Film Studio as well as DC Comics. Sega was owned by Paramount. 20th Century Fox and CBS were both early players in the commercial game market as well. I genuinely can't wait to see where this goes because it could be fantastic or fantastically awful, but we're definitely going to keep an eye on these.
Yar's Revenge. I want a film based on Yar's Revenge. I think that could be good.
Oh yeah, I mean, Howard Scott Warshaw gave you the template. They probably won't use it, but they could just do the film of the comic of the story that he created. Yeah.
On This Week in Racing, It's Tomorrow Now has submitted a time extension article about Sega Rally on the Mega Drive. French developer Anais Segetsi is working on porting it to the system and has made some progress, and you can actually see a very impressive rendition of the track and scenery, including bumps.
And finally, some bad news. Or is it good news? Actually, I think it's bad news. I think they got a bad reputation unfairly. Mike C76 lets us know that Varta, the company that made all those barrel-shaped batteries that eventually killed so many motherboards, has gone bust. It's not their fault. They made these barrel-shaped batteries for things that were supposed to last 5 or 6 years, and then 25 years later someone says, oh, it's leaked and killed my motherboard. Well, of course it has. There are loads more in the subreddit this week. I'm shocked how much there is this week. There's just so many things being submitted. If you want to have a browse at them anytime you like to kill some time, then feel free to do so. And of course, submit your own links to there and upvote and downvote things to see what we pick next week.
My reputation precedes me, it would seem. I'm not sure why, but Colony Activist posted this last story saying, I'm not sure why, but I feel this is right up Chris's street. Why?
Racing.
Oh, is it because it's about multi-layer data encryption? No. It's because it's about strip poker, and somehow that means I'd click and read it, which I did. And it is right up my street, not because of the nature of the game, but more so because it touches on a pet hate of most gamers, paid DLC. Only it wasn't DLC. You already had the content on the disc, but you had to ring up a hotline to unlock it. So basically, the link provided takes us to a blog post on dosgame.at entitled How We Restored a Forgotten Strip Poker Game. It's written by a guy called Eric, and it details how, working off the back of existing research by a coder called Cheetah, also known as CT-PAX-X, they worked to unlock the content protected by the vendor system and vend technology. The games, Strip Poker Professional Volume 1 and Volume 2 for DOS CD-ROM by Artworx Software Company Limited. The situation was an interesting one. Basically, if you purchased these titles back in 1995, yes, you had a fully playable game, but there were additional teams of opponents already on the CD-ROM, but they were additional paid content. So if you were just that good at poker that you'd beaten all the original teams and you really were in need of additional opponents, you had to make the call of shame to a hotline, pay up, and get an unlock code based off of your unique serial number. As discussed in the article, this couldn't be done with a simple keygen or crack, as the CD content remained encrypted for the player and it was decrypted as it was read from the disc. The issue all these decades later, of course, is, for preservation purposes, is that the hotline has been dead for a long time. This has clearly caused archivists frustration, as while the content is there, it can't be viewed or played without a decryption method. So they essentially had to reverse engineer the whole system and turn it into a complete hard drive install that would include the additional players. We've discussed preservation plenty of times, so for me, being a family-friendly podcast, of course, I think the conversation here is about the paid DLC, or at least, about paid DLC in general, or at least paid additional game content. While it's a modern frustration, and there was a lot of pushback aimed at EA a few years ago, as they really took it too far, Star Wars Battlefront EA, anyone? But it really isn't new. So, guys, what would you regard as the earliest forms of paid updates to a game you'd saved your hard-earned pocket money for? And which was the most frustrating or biggest rip-off? Jason?
I was struggling to come up with something that really felt like a rip-off from that era, at least that I actually bought. Fourth and Inch's construction set comes to mind. I mean, it did what it said, but when you got down to it, it didn't really give you that much gameplay variation, and team selection was a pain. Like, you had to kind of go into the construction kit to make any changes and save them back out. You didn't really have too much expansion there. This, we ship it no matter what you pay to unlock has, of course, become extremely popular. There are machines out there, shipping with CPUs that have cores that you have to pay extra to access after installation because they've decided it's cheaper to just make one iteration of the CPU and just, electronically fuse it. It's becoming very common in automotive. We already talked about the original Xbox example where it ships with the capability to play DVDs, but you have to unlock it with the remote. Also, an interesting trend are people posting articles on the subreddit saying specifically, Chris, I posted this for you. You'll like it. XOXOXO. Meanwhile, I get posts of the variety, we're going to lock Jason in a dungeon and force him to eat nothing but spray cheese until he agrees to like Outrun. So, thanks, guys.
Be nice to Jason. Be nice to Jason. That's your task.
How about just not mean? You don't have to be nice. Maybe just not mean, or not use compulsion and violence as your only tools of advocacy. How about that? How about a little carrot before the stick?
You mentioned expansion discs, and that's the first thing I remember. Dungeon Master. It had the expansion called Chaos Strikes Back. The official name for it was Chaos Strikes Back Expansion Set Number 1, to give its full title in 1989, although it actually was a standalone game. However, I think if you hadn't played Dungeon Master, you would last about 3 minutes before you turned it off in frustration because it was super difficult right from the start. But it does go back further than that. I remember the first one that I got that I think I was unhappy with was Deeper Dungeons for Gauntlet on my CPC.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the reason why I was unhappy with that was because I bought it to get some more life from Gauntlet. And I don't think I really realised why I got bored with Gauntlet. Gauntlet doesn't have an end. You just repeat the same thing over and over until you run out of health or credits. And Deeper Dungeons was just more of that. I think I want an end to my games. I want a story, a journey, a destination. And I disappointed myself. Probably not the fault of the people that made it, not Atari's fault or whoever made it for them. But I disappointed myself with that. I also remember Promised Lands for Populous, which again, I'd finished with Populous and I've got that and I realised, it's more Populous and I'm kind of finished with Populous. I thought it would revitalise it. No, it's just more Populous. But it does go back further than that. It goes actually back to the start of the 80s with RPGs. Like Temple of Apshai and Wizardry had their sequels as actual expansions that required the original game to play, which I think was a misstep. And I think that RPG games were in their infancy and they'd realised it was a misstep and they went for the tried and tested way of just adding a Roman numeral to the end of the first game and selling it as a completely new game. DLC has been with us for a long time. I know that at the same time as this strip poker stuff was going on, Shareware was experimenting with the same idea. These CD-ROMs, you can say, well, we can put all this stuff in the CD-ROM, so why don't we put these encrypted games on there and you phone up and unlock the game? Because, of course, Shareware had the problem of, I want to play the second episode now, so I phone up this number, pay my credit card, and then a week and a half later I get it. And that would allow them to do it right now and give the payoff there and then.
Early ones I can think of are both Amiga titles, where they were ST as well. Falcon famously had mission disc upgrades, as did Test Drive 2, I think it was. But it didn't feel like a rip-off back then because they were usually about half the price of the full game and they still came with pack-ins in the box. So it really expanded on the original experience. For me, if I want to pick on one that was a blatant rip-off, I'm sorry, it is more modern, but it is the one I mentioned earlier. It would be Star Wars Battlefront EA on the PS4 in 2013. Those that know, it was a shell of a game with almost zero content unless you opened up your wallet hard. It almost felt like you'd paid full price for nothing more than a menu and a storefront. And I've not seen anything like it before or since. And the backlash was so brutal that they did make good, not by correcting the first one. Oh, no, you had to buy Star Wars Battlefront EA 2, but it was a much better game and had a much better reception. Back to the amazing preservation work by DOSGame.at. I do note at the end of this story about unlocking additional players for Strip Poker Professional 1 and 2 that there is a section at the bottom of the blog called Related Downloads for this article. It's time now for our community question of the week. And last week's question was, what repair skill would you like to upgrade? Or if you're already a master, what skill do you wish you could teach to others? So are we out of contest mode, guys?
We are.
Fantastic. Who wants to take number one?
I'll take number one. Personality C6059 or 6059 says, surface mount soldering. I just can't do it and I wish I could. First, I needed upgraded eyes and hands, I think. And my experience is that people think that and then eventually they get good at it and then they only want to do SMD. They don't want to do through-hole because SMD is faster. I'm not at that point yet. I still struggle with it.
Pajako6502 said, I would like to properly learn how to use any oscilloscope. One, so I can use it to diagnose retro system faults, but mainly so I can get my scope tracks up and running, which I believe is you can just have a Vectrex if you have this hardware and an oscilloscope.
Oh, nice. Jeff Mendoza says,
he's done it again.
He's at number 3, though. He's at number 3.
Yeah.
He says, knowing when to stop. If I open up a console for repairs, I don't just fix what's broken. I try to replace everything that could possibly break. Then I end up breaking more things in the process. Fantastic. That's how it would be for me. Just breaking things, making them worse. Any other standout replies there, guys?
CRT repairs. Yeah, I need to get into that. The big thing that's stopping me even trying CRT repairs is having the space to be able to open up something of that size and have it all laid out and leave it there for a couple of weeks until I get parts and all the rest of it. That's why I wouldn't do it, because of the space involved. But soldering, a bad eyesight comes up again and again.
Yeah.
What would you have been doing in the 90s that would make you go blind. Anyway,
learning how to solder at school. But that's why people that solder, you have these magnifying things. That's and glasses. I've worn 3 pairs of glasses at once when I was trying to. Anyway, yeah. Anything to magnify it even further. Yeah. Cool.
Do we have a question for this week?
We do. Thank you all so much for your responses to last week's. And this week's is, what is the most memorable DLC you've rung up the hotline of shame for, or maybe just paid for online? Keep it clean. But yeah, what's the most memorable DLC you've ever paid for?
Should we open it up to expansion discs as well, if you've had to buy the expansion disc, like the Promised Lands or Deeper's Dungeons or Falcon Mission disc? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, definitely.
What's the most memorable? Answers on a postcard to the usual address or to the Reddit subreddit, which Jason is.
Reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro.
So thank you for joining us this week. And we're done. Thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next week. And Chris is waving.
I was about to wave.
Jason's waving enthusiastically.
If you're interested in upgrading your CRT repair skills, be very, very careful.
Yes.
Please.
Bye.
Bye.
Not our fault if you do.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 The Gamer, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Stiles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.